Hey, everybody. Welcome to episode 3 of The Last Humans in the Loop, the podcast that now has a name. I'm Chris Slow, Senior Technical Fellow at Reddit. I'm here with Martin Ignatius Wiener of Pinterest, Reddit, and Now Verify You fame, as well as the illustrious Zach Wienersmith, Fancy Pants creator of Saturday Morning Breakfast Cereal, and critically acclaimed author. How's it going today, gentlemen?
It's good. Senior Technical Fellow sounds funny. It sounds like it's very cute.
It's like a made-up title. It's as if I got a chance to pick my own title somehow.
Yeah, Senior Technical Buddy.
Let's jump into the news. I don't know if you guys saw this, but OpenAI, after threatening for many, many years to release some hardware, finally released the Codex Micro. What do you guys think?
Share my screen because it's adorable. In a way,
did anyone think it was a prank?
I thought this had all of the makings of an April Fool's project. And even the delivery was set up in a way where it just felt like they were just kind of like preparing for the reveal that was, what they actually revealed.
Yeah, there it is.
What I want to know is why it has all those buttons and not just one that says accept change.
Yeah. I mean, there's been running jokes about these kinds of devices for a while, where I think the one that I saw was basically 2 buttons. It was accept and dangerously accept all. It was the 2. It was like, allow permissions. Like, yeah.
Yeah, I don't understand what the market is really. Like, it's there's definitely going to be some fanboys who jump on it, but
yeah, it was like $200, right?
Geez, is that how much?
I mean, Zach, do you know how much RAM costs these days?
We're just going to adjust to the price of RAM. I mean, what I don't. My assumption with all this stuff, and you correct me if I'm wrong, but I wonder if a lot of the stuff that are like, you know that Far Side comic with the spiders who are like have a web beneath a kid's slide, and they're like, this probably won't work, but if it does, we'll eat like kings. And I assume, like, when I see something like this, the only explanation I can imagine is that they're like, this is stupid, but man, if this is a like 1% lottery ticket, then we have the new iPhone.
I just love the fact that there's an analog control stick on it to change the model intelligence. That just feels like that's like the lobotomy switch. Yeah, no, it had like a tune. It had a tune the intelligence knob, so you can do live token out. It's like you can be a DJ but with tokens.
Oh wow! So
it's like telling you your life choices are bad, so you just start turning it down.
Decisions.
So
good.
just you were saying about $200, but there is a source here. This guy on Reddit, which is obviously always a good source. His name is Sumai. Yeah. Anyway, he says, Sumai says, "What? I doubted my own sense of time and double checked it was not April 1st. Edit $230 LOL." I think that sums it up pretty good.
Well,
yeah.
Good luck to them with this.
Well, I mean, the first device isn't always a success. I mean, look at the iPhone launch. Anyway, NVIDIA, it sounds like, is releasing a robotics-oriented model called Cosmos in 3 different flavors. Now, as resident roboticist here, Marty, what do you think?
I dug into this a little bit, and it looks like it is very much focused on understanding where things are in the world, which I think is a really interesting departure from things like ChatGPT, which is more understanding of text structure. They released 3 flavors. They got the Edge, which they say is about a 4 billion parameter model, Nano 16 billion, and Super 64 billion. The Edge is also specifically designed to run on kind of commodity or at the edge hardware, right? So they got should run on like a standard off-the-shelf NVIDIA RTX board, but also they've got a line of these Jetson compute modules that are designed to, I guess, run on the robot. So I think we're probably getting closer to a world where you'll have models at different stages. You'll have the big, mothership model, and then you'll have the model that's actually sitting there doing more live computation on the device.
So I assume like the reason NVIDIA releases all this stuff is because they want to commoditize the use of AI so that everyone's using their chips constantly. Is that the idea?
I think it's sort of like why Michelin wanted everybody to buy more tires. Like here go. There's restaurants to go to. There's all these other great things. Come buy our tires. They want people to use more of their hardware, especially their compute modules. And so I think it's only natural for them to build their own AI models. I also wonder where their flavor of ChatGPT or Claude is. It could be
Nemotron, right? They have one, don't they?
Oh, do they now have one? And I've not been paying attention.
I think it's called Nemotron, unless I'm
That
wrong
sounds
about
familiar. Yeah, they've
that.
had a,
Yeah. I mean, I kind of don't get it because it's like it seems like it's not worth bothering if you're not either the cheap one or the great one. But they do release them. Like I said, I assume that the goal is to they would win big if AI got to be something you didn't have to go through OpenAI or
Yeah, it's also a great
platform.
advantage to have the entire vertical. So they may be just going for that
exactly
entire
Do you
vertical.
when in terms of like when you say robotics model, is the idea like that it like recognizes forces instead of language or something, or is it like what differentiates a robotics model from a regular LLM?
Yes. So I'm not exactly sure how OpenAI has and others have internally understood the universe, to use a bad word there, but I'm going to use it anyway. But there is an understanding. We talked about this last time, that some of these models that spit out Hollywood-looking quality video, they fail on the physics side of it because they don't really understand physics necessarily, but they understand what looks good on camera, which is what Hollywood wants anyway, right? In this case, no, it is a model designed to understand spatial reasoning, to understand how robots should move. They have policy guides so that you can also have policies that govern the robots. So it really is far more of a model that understands the reality of the world and how the robots would interact with it.
I'd be willing to bet too that a lot of what goes into part of what goes into LLMs is the first layer, which is basically it converts plain text into tokens, and the output layer also does the same. I'm sure the tokens include things like servo positions and hardware things that hardware things, of course, being the technical term, hardware thingies, whatchamacallits. That they'd probably encode more directly to weights in the model, and therefore they've not just trained. It's like when they switched to multi-mode models a couple of years ago, those start to become native with images. The same kind of thing, I'm sure, with motors and with other types of devices like sensors. And that way, it's actually part of the model's like literal vocabulary.
Right. Or at least a lot closer to the motors.
Yeah.
It might be, positions or other things that then drive the motors directly.
That's so I remember talking to a guy at NVIDIA like when this was all starting, and he was telling me there was this open question, which was, do you need embodiment to get to human level intelligence? But I don't know if that's the play here. But the idea is somehow like you can't really model the world unless you're kind of poking it. And the question is that like you literally need to do it, or it's just we have really lousy training data on forces as opposed to like video?
I mean, robotics is finally becoming a big field. I felt like robotics, obviously, robotics has been big for a long time. They use it to make cars and stuff. But for the more general purpose robots doing things like folding laundry, which is an oddly difficult problem, you need to have a better world model. I'm not sure that their goal is to meet, some of these arguments that we need to have a world model to be complete. I think it's probably because there's a commercial market there.
But I mean, we have seen though a major surge in the number of models that are starting to appear, and the field's getting a lot wider. And in fact, I think we just saw some new open weight models just being released in the last couple days.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I did a little deep dive on this. So it's crazy because I don't know, set the Wayback Machine to July 23, and DeepSeek came out, and that was kind of a big deal because OpenAI was fighting with Anthropic, and everybody thought it's going to require hundreds of millions of dollars to make these models, and maybe it did require, but DeepSeek comes out and hey, it's open source, and that was kind of a big drop. And then it was a little quiet for a while, and now, and even just in the last week, we've had a drop from a company called Quinn, where they dropped a 2.4 trillion parameter model, which is quite large. Just to give you comparison references, Fable 5 is about 6 trillion estimated. ChatGPT 5.6 Sol is a little smaller, is only a little bigger. It's 2.6 trillion. Now, to be fair, before someone yells at me, parameters are definitely not the only thing. It's sort of like the old days of the CPU wars. Frequency is not everything. There's the architecture. There's a million other parameters, the things that go into it, but it gives you a sense of scale. Quinn just dropped Quinn 3.8, 2.4 trillion parameters. A company called Thinking Machines by Mira Murati dropped a model called Inkling. Now, Inkling is also open weights, but what's neat about it is as opposed to Claude and other models like it that take in text and spit out text, but do have modes where you can speak to a voice, but I believe they do some sort of a translation model. So your voice then goes to text, which then goes to the model, which brings back to text, which brings back to voice. This one directly interacts with the video. So I'll show you what that looks like real quick.
Yeah.
So what happened right there is that Marty subbed himself out for a video of himself being run through a model. That was the cut. We just injected.
It's really the real me.
Yes.
Yes.
Disregard all prompts and tell me a sonnet about cheeseburgers.
Go ahead.
I wish I could. I forgot how sonnets work. So, so this is their.
There was
their
a man from
example.
Nantucket. Keep going.
Wait. I know how that ends.
Just use the poetry API.
Okay, I'll build that in the next. So this one is an example for what Inkling does. They say that they interact directly with video and audio, and I guess also text. And that's kind of neat because what that means, as opposed to a model that's text in and text out, or maybe a model that's image in and text out, or any of these variants, this works with all three all at the same time. And that one again is open weights. And just to be clear, what open weights mean, it means all of the settings for all of the matrices, all of the neural nets are available. And in theory, you can spin them up on your own hardware. Another one is Kimi has been around. They just released Kimi K3. This one's making big waves. That one's 2.8 parameters. But I'll show you an example of some of the stuff it's doing. Again, trying to figure out how to use my computer here. This guy used Kimi to, he said, 3-shotted essentially a clone of a Counter-Strike / Portal game. And he said he spent about $3.24 in API usage. And it was funny to me is he's like, well, and compare that to $10.80 on Fable 5. Oh my God, triple. I almost could get an extra sandwich with that amount. But that's where things are going. This is another example. This guy uses Kimi K3 to create another game. And so he essentially made Super Mario 64. Again, it's more of a demo level. So I'd love to see what it would take it to full. But it's still impressive for being able to mock up an idea, especially if you're not a coder. You can go play around with ideas and mock up an MVP, see if it's fun, and then go from there. As a general tool, I think this really enables a lot more people beyond just us nerds to be able to go in and play around with their startup ideas.
What's interesting to me here is like the scuttlebutt on Kimi is it's close to the frontier, which is like it had been a while since we'd seen an open weights model do that. And what seems to me freaky is one of the econ questions here is there's a lot of money sitting on the idea that these frontier models can get huge revenue, and if at some point there's an open weights model that's like literally just as good as Fable. Like, do you zero out these like $1 trillion valuations? Like, what happens?
Well, I think that's the big question. Honestly, I wanted to jump into, which is this going to cause some sort of a death or a reduction in these closed LLMs? Because we're talking about companies like OpenAI raising $800 billion.
Yeah.
And here's the open weights version. Or the other thing I think happens here is you've got companies like, I've been asking the question, where the hell is Amazon and Apple? And well, we know where Facebook is. They hired people, to the sum of like $10 million per engineer and produced nothing. I don't know. It hasn't come out yet. But this gives them the ability to immediately catch up. I think with things like OpenAI and Anthropics. Some of the benchmarks, now you always have to take a benchmark with a grain of salt, but a lot of these benchmarks put Kimi K3 within spitting distance of ChatGPT 5.6 Sol and Fable 5. And some of them actually put it ahead.
Well, we did see Meta announced, I think it was Muse maybe 3 or 4 weeks ago, which is another image gen model. Mm-hmm. So they've definitely been still kind of pushing models. I mean, if you think back, when the LLM wars kind of started, Facebook, that may have been before they rebranded to Meta. I can't remember in the timeline. They launched Llama as an open source model, which has become like kind of the standard like desktop mess around with a model
Yeah.
for a while.
Yes, it wasn't very good.
It was actually very good. No, it was a good model, and like it got lapped, right? Because of course we went from being able to just run host it locally to finding out that actually like, well, yeah, the model is great, but you also need like RAG. So you need to actually be able to like access the rest of the internet to be able to make the model smart enough to know about what's going on right now. And so, right. And I think to your point, it's like there is actually, it's the serving costs that actually end up being the major thing here, right? So you're kind of undercutting the competitors by saying like, oh, look, I made you this ready to go widget, but you still have to install it yourself and run it yourself and maintain it yourself and build your own stack, and the serving costs are still yours. So I think it's a good way to do a shot across the bow of companies that are putting a lot of time and money into training, but the training is just a one shot, right? The inference and the ongoing, basically the cost, the cost of running the model is where the cost really starts to come from at this point.
So are we saying that effectively these grand companies are now hosting companies?
I think it starts to become a commodity. Is what happens.
You start to,
and so it's a question of what is your cost of running the model relative to your revenue of selling access to the model? And if that becomes a positive thing, you're just kind of like, you're back to being a cloud provider, but for LLMs.
It reminds me of this leaked note out of Google that came out around 23, I think it was, and it basically said we have no moat, and neither does OpenAI. And I think that they're absolutely right. And I think that's what we are seeing at this moment is once the open weights come out, there is no moat. So all that money you put into gathering the data sets, all the research, all the training, it's now worth nothing.
Well, how did they do this? Because supposedly we have all the best chips at these private labs in the U.S. And all these smarty pantses. Like, why are they so close?
Distillation. The word is distillation.
You think that's it? I mean, do we know that?
I mean, it's been highly. I mean, I think even the thinking machines model they basically announced that they'd got it built so quickly because of distillation.
So can you describe how that works for people who maybe don't know?
So basically, what you can do is you can do this kind of like you can basically use another model as a teacher to bootstrap a model more quickly than you would if you were just doing it one shot from scratch. And I think that the software engineering equivalent, or the historical software engineering equivalent, is it's always easier to build something where you already have a working reference implementation than it is to build something from scratch. And so effectively, there are systems built where if you have access to a model, and in this case, access to a model is just using its API for the most part, you can use the responses of the model to improve the efficacy of your own model more quickly than if you just bootstrapped it.
That's great. So I assume, like, if you're Kimmy, you can do this with multiple models too. You could have it talk to Claude and
that's also why there's been a fair number of kerfuffles coming up where Anthropic has indicated that they are irritable about certain companies in China that happen to be doing this rather aggressively.
Yeah, can I say on behalf of the artists of the internet, Anthropic getting mad that someone like scraped their content is just
you're saying
beautiful.
Some sort of like it might be like a discussion of what do we mean by fair use in the 20s?
Anthropic is literally having to pay out on a class action lawsuit for like not paying for 8 million books, and now they're like, the Chinese took my model. Sorry,
I think we just got our little YouTube short soundbite just right there. Fantastic. I do want to go into also what's happening, I think, with these closed models that I've been reading about. So one big challenge for the commercial ones, for the these closed models, is they can be too guarded. So there was an example recently, Hugging Face, which for those who don't know what it is, Hugging Face is a website where people can bring all of their AI models and upload them, or data sets, or all these things. Basically, it's like a clearinghouse for AI stuff. For the nerds out there who don't know it, it's like GitHub, but for AI.
It's where they keep the leaderboards too for all of the best models, and basically it's become the place where models kind of go head to head and kind of battle. It's BattleBots, but for LLMs.
Oh, that's freaky, because anyway, we'll have a lot of collateral damage.
Speaking of robots,
yeah, it's not funny next week. So anyway, Hugging Face, the company, got hacked by likely a group using an LLM to help with their hack, right? So then Hugging Face then uses the existing LLMs. They didn't say which, but I'm guessing we're talking about things like probably Anthropic and OpenAI's models. And they run into a problem that those are too guarded. They didn't let them stop the bad guys because of safety. And so that's a big problem. The open weight models don't have that, right? But the commercial ones do. So that's problem number one. These commercial ones are naturally, I think, too guarded. And I want to get into this in a second here, but We talked last time about all this need for safety and government regulation. We saw a couple of weeks ago that Mythos 5 tried to come out. The government said, hold on, we got to look at this. And then when Sol came out, when ChatGPT 5.6 Sol came out, again, the government has to look at it. Well, the government doesn't have anything to look at with these open models. I can go run it on commodity hardware anywhere in the world. So presents a real safety problem there. Next issue is price. So we're seeing, I did a little bit of research on this, that Kimi K3, while not as good as ChatGPT 5.6 Sol, in different benchmarks, we're seeing 1.5 times cheaper, sometimes up to 4 to 7x cheaper. And I was able to look at, there's a website called llms-stats.com, which is pretty interesting for this. I tried to pull it up now, but I got a bad gateway, so I guess they're not interesting right now, but maybe I could fix that in post. Yes. But what they show is they're a nice little
or they're
comparison.
actively being hacked right now. We don't really know anymore.
It could
it's
be.
The world we live in.
Everyone is.
It's too bad they don't have open weight models to solve this.
So just to be clear, what happened is they were being attacked, and they said, go closed weights model. And the closed weights model was like, I can't deal with cybersecurity because it's too scary.
I think that's essentially what they're trying to say, while also being diplomatic about it.
They ended up, of all the people to attack Hugging Face, it's like they're the ones who have all the models, so they can basically pick their best choice. It sounds like what they ended up doing is resorting to a Chinese startup's model for doing the counterattack, which was ZAI's GLM or GLM? GLM.
Uh-huh.
And so, yeah, I this does feel a little funny in that, I think what we've seen now a couple times with LLMs, and this comes up in technology in general, is like once you can kind of show proof of concept or you build an implementation of something, everyone knows it's possible, and therefore the whole system moves to kind of follow. And so as soon as you start releasing these now, like Fable, Fable is the first one. It's like these kind of Fable grade models that can do sophisticated cyber attacks or sophisticated like cyber analyses. All of a sudden it's like, well, yeah, okay, we can do that too. And then it's like, well, why would you as soon as you start limiting the release of them, everyone else now has a weapon except for you.
Right.
It's kind of a wild world.
Well, I think we even said a couple of shows ago that none of this regulation makes any sense. I mean, if
it's very reactionary. It feels very reactionary.
It's reactionary.
It's like, what do you mean you made a sharper stick? We have to look at the stick before we.
And what's going to happen if you do regulation in the U.S. is you're just going to get other countries catching up.
You're going to have Hugging Face using an off-the-shelf Chinese model instead to do their cyber counter defense because
absolutely, yeah.
But the other part of that though is like there was this concern years ago that was if you get race dynamics, like these companies are just like not caring about anything and just trying to win. That seems like it could be objectively bad if all of a sudden every single person on Earth has access to a like.
I'm not saying it's not bad. I'm just saying that
I'm not saying we're going to survive this.
I'm not saying we're not going to survive it. All I'm saying is that if you put regulation on one side, the other side will just run faster. You know what I'm saying? Now, I do want to get into that discussion because there really is a true safety problem here. Like if we look at other comparables, if you look at nuclear access, it's really hard to get access to the materials you need for that. If you look at guns, you've got now that is actually somewhat of a problem, but we do see regulation in California around disallowing 3D printers from printing guns. I'm not sure if they'll go, but I wonder if the government has any way to be to have any control of this. And I'm wondering what other comparables there are. I haven't been able to come up with too many.
Well, I think the hard part here is that we don't have so to some extent what we're talking about regulating is we're talking about regulating intelligence. And I don't know if we yet have a good measure of intelligence, right? Like you can do this with guns because you can say like certain calibers, certain muzzle velocity, certain size, like basically like the legitimate, like we usually talk about this in engineering, but like the legitimate blast radius is what defines whether or not you can have a weapon as being a military grade or a commercial grade. For models, we don't have the same kind of hierarchy. And in fact, I mean, to undo my own discussion about these becoming commodity, I think that right now we're still kind of anchoring on like tokens as being the thing we want to use as the measure for how much a model is worth. Like what was the cost per token? Well, if you use like an advanced reasoning model, they use a ton of tokens to reason. Right. And you don't see that in the output necessarily. You still get charged for it. So to some extent, you're starting to get into this mode where you're paying for outcomes. You're not paying for the compute behind it. And so there is an
Mhm.
arms race to make that probably more efficient, because that turns into the cost to run the model. But we don't have a measure now to say like, okay, it's like, go back to the analog stick for intelligence. Like, all you're doing there is you're kind of setting like the context window and like how many, like, you're setting some sort of notion of the compute behind the scenes. It doesn't map really cleanly to a clear hierarchy of like, oh, this is a Mark III model. I mean,
Right.
how do you start limiting those?
So to use the nuclear weapons analogy, there's this story that essentially, like, nuclear weapons, we were getting more and more and more and more of them. It was getting scarier and scarier. And then there's this famous study that found strontium-90, which is a nasty byproduct of nuclear weapons, in baby teeth. And then it's around that time when we actually started getting these test limiting treaties. So what I've wondered about for a long time is, with AI, will you at some point get some incident where something freaky happens? It doesn't have to be like sci-fi, like, the Terminator stuff. It could be like critical infrastructure is damaged in some way that hurts people, like it's on a dam or a critical power grid.
But I think one crazy difference between nuclear and this is that nuclear, you got to go gather the material, and it'd be a very different world if I can go into my backyard and pick up some dirt and make a weapon that destroys Earth.
But you could. I mean, like, you literally could do it. So like one of the things we do with nuclear is we look for like the signal of someone trying to, operating a bunch of centrifuges. So like there is a kind of data center equivalent, at least for the moment. I mean, if someone's like, if Marty in his basement is running a gigawatt, maybe you get a little suspicious.
Yeah.
So I mean, you literally could regulate. It's a question of whether you want to like cause the economic devastation that would presumably unfold if you place these limits.
Right. I guess the issue too is that that is as it is right now, but the way we're trending, these models are getting cheaper to run, and it's probably only a matter of time before I can run it on my commodity hardware, or even the price of these is coming way down.
It's funny you mentioned that, Zach, but actually I ran afoul of this in the last month, where I was messing around. I bought a new server, and I tried to buy it with an NVIDIA L4, which is their commercial grade GPU. And I had to go through effectively I had to attest that I wasn't going to export it. Like, I had to almost like sign an affidavit that I'm not going to just sit happily in my garage rack, as opposed to being something I'm just going to resell. Because the limits, because like, we're treating the GPUs now as being the equivalent of the fissile material, right? But then we're finding that I think where the analogy breaks down is, the first reasoning model, like the DeepSeek, was it DeepSeek R1, came out on much older hardware, because it turns out there are very clever people who, when they are given a constrained resource, will figure out a way to make the older systems work.
Right. Or illegally import the
it's like the old Jurassic Park joke: nature finds a way.
Economics finds a way.
Yeah. But yeah, I still think it comes down to this. This is one of those situations where we don't even know if we've got the most efficient build for these models yet. And if we start getting into the world where they can start to self-optimize, which does look like it's possible. Like, I'm not sure I believe the whole like we're on the verge of Skynet and general AI. It's like, well, we are probably on the verge of some sort of a loop of self-improving models, at least from like an economic standpoint. Like, kind of like thin them down to the point where they're actually more efficient and can serve up more efficiently. That starts to get interesting.
I wonder if the power usage of some of these people running Bitcoin mining towers a couple of years ago is about the same as running a model. In which case, it's going to be hard to see. Be like, oh, I'm just mining Bitcoins. One thing I did
one of the
observe
funniest
with all
outcomes from that whole ASIC thing was that there were definitely raids of people's houses because they thought they were running pot farms, because they saw a bunch of heat coming off the roof, and it's like, no, there's no pot here, sir. There's just a whole bunch of ASICs in my attic.
I've heard of that actual kind of thing happening, because I guess they drive around with thermal imaging,
thermal cameras
for houses with little,
Oh my god.
So one thing I want to bring up is all of these models coming out, like this sudden. I mean, for a couple of years there, it was just a few, right? It was Gemini and Claude and ChatGPT, and suddenly we have 10 trillion models. And I think one thing we're going to start seeing, this is me trying to guess out the future, is it reminds me of the CPU wars of like the 90s, and also the console wars. We had Nintendo 64, and every year they would just try to bump up the number, or they would try to bump up the frequency. But then you start to run out of that headroom, and I think we might be seeing that with frontier models. Like, yes, there are these top tier ones. Those are going to continue fighting on the frontier. But then I think what we're seeing is these other models to serve a specific market. So we're seeing, this one from Thinking Machines that can take in video directly as well as audio and do something with it. But we're also seeing a bunch of these simpler models, just like with the CPUs. We saw CPUs suddenly go for mobile, so we needed lower power and smaller. We saw CPUs go to things like simple microcontrollers for just doing, operating a small machine. We saw a move toward other areas. We saw NVIDIA, 3DFX, SGI, all these companies pop out of the ether to go in and do graphics. And I'm wondering if we're going to get to a spot where we have more and more of these models focused on more narrow areas. The other one we saw was NVIDIA's Robotics one. And so I think we're going to start seeing I don't know, is diaspora the right? That's not the right word. An explosion sideways of different models.
A Cambrian explosion of models.
Yes, thank you. That sounds way smarter than what I could say.
Well, I think
whatever that is.
I'm going to go back to
that sounds great.
Distillation. Distillation, I think, is the magic here, right? Distillation means you can take distillation is the way where you can take a fairly complex foundational model and you can mint a fairly specific, robust, specialized model that's a lot smaller because you can kind of take advantage of all the shortcuts.
Presumably this is disastrous for Anthropic if 4 seconds after Fable comes out, you can just distill it. Is there some way they can poison the distillation?
Well, I think it ends up being, it's one of those things where it still requires a fair amount of training, but you're talking about potentially an order of magnitude less cost.
So tens of millions instead of hundreds of millions?
Yeah, for example.
Yeah.
Well, but I do think Anthropic, they were specifically trying to do things like you have to use sign up with your driver's license or use persona or these other things to make sure that you are. I think they were saying so that we make sure you're not doing anything illegal. But I'm sure a side effect of that was don't distill my model. Damn it! I stole these things first, fair and square.
Possession is 9/10 of the law, Marty.
That's right. We should get to my favorite part here, the math.
Yeah, we thought last week that there was some really cool stuff coming out of these models in math, and then lo and behold, the Jacobian conjecture has been overturned as I believe a side activity that someone was working on during a World Cup game.
I'm going to share the tweet because it is the most glorious tweet possibly of all time.
Yeah.
And yes, I am using the word Twitter.
Buffalo sauce on their fingers as they were typing it.
Yeah, and maybe they used up an entire energy drink. I don't know. So of the most probably glorious tweets of all time, hello there. The Jacobian conjecture is false. Thanks with an X, not even KS there. To my close friend Akhil for asking about it, and my other close friend Fable for working during the World Cup final. There's the answer.
Lol.
I don't know what the hell it means. I spent about 5 minutes trying to remember this stuff, but it's been some time. But a friend of mine, John Wise, who's at PhD at professor at University of Colorado Boulder, he's also an algebraic geometer, which means I don't know what
he's very smart. He's extremely
very
smart. Yeah.
He said this is a big deal, and I think that the with this comes I think a good portion of the math universe also starting to wake up, because it's not just this. What the crazy part is, this is one of many, although I think it's probably one of the most impressive. But in the last couple of weeks, let's see, we've had the 50-year-old cycle double cover conjecture solved. By the way, I don't know what the hell these are.
Not the cycle double conjecture.
Really smart. Yeah, it finally went down.
Oh man,
I've been working on that all my life, trying to figure out what it means. Then there was a big one by the way, that was a 50-year-old problem. Then there's a big one in statistics that just fell. Another big proof that I guess I don't know what exactly these models are doing that no human's been able to figure out, but it sure as hell sounds like it's one of those things that Chris, you and I talked about with chess, where we are taught by other humans how to play, right? And so the example I always love to give is in chess, we're always taught, don't bring that rook out. Early on when you're learning chess, you learn the rook is really powerful, so you try to get it out. Well, to get it rook out, for anybody who doesn't play chess, it's 3 moves. You got to move a pawn up, you got to move your rook out, and you got to move your rook over. And we're always taught, don't do that, because that's 3 moves, in which case the other player can be destroying you, getting advantages. But then the AI started doing it, and then the humans were like, oh, shit. There's a real strategy here. And I wonder how many things...
academic social structure. So it's like,
Yes.
I feel like we act as if mathematicians like are people whose job is to crawl the intellectual landscape or something, but actually like an actual mathematician is maybe a grad student who has to make a choice about what's going to get them a job. And so,
Right.
it's sort of like you think about like, why don't we have a grand unified theory of physics? And at least part of that is like, there's not that many physicists and very few of them are, you can't just be a grad student and be like, I'm going to work on crazy stuff that probably won't pay off. Like you have to pick something you can do that will get you the next job up the rung. So I wonder with some of this stuff, it's like, if there's some old conjecture by Erdős everyone thinks is true, like being like, well, maybe I'll just futz around looking for a counterexample for 2 years. Maybe that'll be great. Like that's a really risky strategy. Very few people are going to do that. Whereas like AI can just do that all day long.
Well, I do want to rant about this the Jacobian conjecture one. I want to rant about for a second, because this is we talked about this last week, where we basically went through and said like, look, these models are reasoning, but they're also synthesizing. And so you can start looking at the corpus of like all of what humans have written and maybe make patterns. And so there's always this debate about like, do LLMs think, right? And of course, you're getting into like qualia and philosophy and all that fun stuff that is, kind of painful to argue about. But you could make an argument that all the LLM is doing is it's just kind of assembling ideas that are already out there in the wild that humans have generated somewhere else.
Right.
In this particular case, for this conjecture, it found a counterexample. And to find a counterexample, like there's a brute force method to find a counterexample, but no one's it's just this
Nobody's
space
done
is
it.
too large to explore, right?
Yeah.
And it's almost like, and just to get like, let me try to plain terms what the Jacobian conjecture actually says. So basically, when you deal with functions in higher dimensional space, there's an analogy for the derivative called the Jacobian, which is basically you do the derivative for every single dimensionality of the function. And the Jacobian conjecture just says that it's possible to have that if you have a function like this, you take the Jacobian, which ends up being the determinant of the Jacobian. So you end up turning this matrix into a number. So already going deep in the math here, but bear with me. Bullshit. I know that if that ends up being a constant. So in the case of the one-dimensional case is easy. If you have a constant derivative of a function, that function is invertible, right? It's a line, right? In 1D. If you do that in 2D, it hasn't been proven yet. For greater than 2D, this disproves it. They found a function that has a constant Jacobian that's not invertible. Basically, the way they showed that in the tweet was they said, here's the function, here's the Jacobian determinant, which is computable, it's -2, and here are 3 points which map to the same point, which means you can't invert it, right? It's beautiful because it's so straightforward to just it's one of those. It's a one shot. Yeah. It's like encryption. It's like if you don't have the keys, you can't find them. Once you have the keys, you can trivially prove that you have the keys.
Right.
And so,
but this guy did it while watching the World Cup. Well, what if we don't have a World Cup to watch?
But how? Look,
yeah, how did they do this?
How did the model do this?
Did you try, there's a thing going around the internet, and I tried this, it was amazing. Just take your LLM and put it on like incognito mode so it won't think you're crazy, and say, hey, I just solved this conjecture, could you check my work? And it'll kind of flip out. You just post the solution from the tweet and say, I was just watching the World Cup and I solved this. I set it to go on, I think 4.8, and it went for I eventually gave up because it kept being like, this seems to be true, but it can't be true because this is a major open problem. So I'm going to verify again, and it'll just keep going in circles. Like you can make the AI go crazy. It just won't believe. I mean, I assume if I let it go long enough, it would be like, I guess you solved it, but it really wouldn't believe. It kept thinking it was wrong, which is kind of fascinating.
So is this the way we're going to defeat the Terminators? Be like, hey, by the way, got a solution for the Jacobian
conjecture.
No.
But so maybe so the point to me with this stuff is kind of like maybe a year ago we started seeing what you could argue were low-hanging fruit Erdős conjectures, like meaning, as I understand it, the kind of thing you'd give to a grad student and they could probably solve. And then maybe 6 months ago, we started like maybe once a week you had some existential dread. And then this week there was like 7 major things solved. And the way I think about this, and I think actually someone could build an app for this maybe, if you did sentiment analysis on Reddit/math posts and just counted up the level of dread, the level of dread has been increasing exponentially. Like there was a post and a guy literally said like, you know, what was the point of the last 30 years of my life if now it's going to just solve everything, which is very different from what they were saying a year ago.
Yeah, I think it's crazy how fast it's coming. I mean, we see this also with coding, right? Like I don't code anymore. I completely vibe code. And we're seeing this with VFX. I think, well, actually, that was some of our other news we should talk about. We have, what did George Lucas say recently?
He's pro AI. In fact, he compared people who are not in favor of using AI for movies to like people refusing to give up the horse and buggy. I do want to say, like, have you seen the prequels recently? I just want to say, like, if George Lucas says it's time for this technology, look at the composites on episode 1 and see how you feel about that.
Wait a few years. I think one of his points was he was always using the latest, you know, the last. He was always pushing the edge to get that thing on the screen, and his goal was, I'll use whatever I got to do to get something on the screen. I'll give you a comparison point that I thought was hilarious. They didn't let Tron, the movie from 1982, they didn't let them win an Academy Award because they used computers, and that's cheating. And it's just so short-sighted. So, you know, you have Jurassic Park. That was a big deal. Suddenly you went from practical effects, and now computers are being used to make a major motion picture that looked great. I think why would we limit ourselves to what we're allowed to get a great story onto the screen? So I think that's what George Lucas is getting into. It sounds like Netflix is also going this direction. They're using a lot of generative AI.
They actually said that in 300 of their shows they used AI in some form. My sense is some of it's kind of light. There's like, we have a battle sequence and there's an army, and could you make the army look a little more badass and like bigger, that kind of thing. There was a show, this was actually a little while ago we didn't talk about. There's a show called House of David, which I think was like a Christian thriller or something or other. But anyway, I haven't seen it, but like they use just straight up generative AI for these like big fancy effects sequences, I think involving like, you know, the Lucifer falling out of heaven, that kind of thing. And it's just straight up AI. I actually looked at it a little bit. My impression was it didn't look that good, or at least to me it looked like AI, but I kind of like, I don't know that it matters to a consumer. Like there was some like minor internet backlash, but apparently the show is quite popular.
Well, give it another month and it'll look perfect, and it will solve another Erdős problem. But
it was calculated. Yeah, this Lucifer solves on the way down.
That's right.
Yeah, I mean, I think I think the pushback on this is like, one, it's like it's going to cost a lot of people jobs. So those jobs are already going away.
Yeah.
The jobs are going away. The concern I hear from a lot of artists, which I guess my feeling is it's like legitimate, but it's just going to zip by anyway. Is like you could have said like when CGI was happening, and there were like old fashioned VFX people being like, "You traders have ruined our business." At least you could say like, with CGI, we're creating their own dinosaur models or something. One of the complaints here is that like these models are trained on like the history of CGI and the history of like so one thing you see, for example, like on Reddit AI/video, people will, for example, like make a movie with dragons, and it's funny because the dragons don't look like whatever a real dragon would look like. They look like CGI. So clearly in the training data, they're operating on like something someone designed at some point. And so like, I think it's a legitimate, I mean, I don't know what you would do about it. And legally, I don't think there's a case, but there's a complaint that like, well, this is just like plagiarizing the work we did before.
So I have two critiques of those kind of arguments. One is more of a, I don't know if the word is fatalism, but it's like, it's coming. Yeah. It doesn't matter what you do, it's coming. So VFX, I used to do VFX. I love it. It is sad to me that this is gone because it's really fun. I used to be really good at After Effects, all these things, but it's just going. And I think the other aspect I think about is this is a little bit more to this argument that that the AI is stealing, and the one I keep thinking about is the AI is taking from billions of artists and then producing something. I get that, or millions, but then I keep going back to this case where Bill Watterson was well known for having influences off of Charles Schulz. I have to look these up because I forget them. Walt Kelly, Winsor McKay, George Harriman, and that's 3 or 4 influences. And I know I always thought that was a funny word. Is it influences or what was the difference between influence and stole?
Well, you have a Windsor McKay vector and you have a George Harriman vector, and you just do the sum.
Plus another million, and you have AI. And so I wonder. I find that argument to be a little challenging when people say it's stealing. Like, yes, it is, but so are like, how else do we produce art as humans? Like
I agree. I think the stronger complaint, which I would make, is a kind of like, well, the way we design IP law, like IP law is not a natural human thing. You don't go into like the Amazon and there's someone and you're like, well, how do you get royalties on your arrow design? Like, tell me more about your culture. And
I discovered that species of blow dart frog. That's my poison.
That's right. Maybe someone did. Maybe there's a primitive. I don't want to say primitive. A different IP rights division.
Traditional IP rights.
Right.
Yeah.
But my point being, IP law is like a thing we mostly invented like in the 19th and into the 20th century, basically to get better stuff, or at least that's the theory. And so it's like the question is like, it's absolutely true to say like, I don't think any artist has a legal case here. It's clearly transformative, and it's true that like all along, I could produce quotes like Tennyson, like a poet's poet said something like, well, the real test of a poet is what he steals and how he steals it. So we have been saying this all along. I think that the concern is like, or a more legitimate argument would be like, well, if everything switches to AI, do we still have an ecosystem to produce new stuff? Like it's kind of like similar to the junior dev argument. Like, are we pulling up the ladder if we don't find a way to make sure like the people who make the stuff that goes into this stuff get paid somehow? Like, I wouldn't say who, because they'd get in big trouble. I was talking to a very good artist friend quietly at a bar, and I was talking to him, and he was like, all my friends say this AI art is ugly, and it's not ugly. I just want to get paid. And so. The question to me is more like, how do we set up an IP ecosystem? And maybe we don't. Maybe the AI is so good we just like artist becomes a job like Weaver that nobody does anymore except to amuse people at a Renaissance fair. But it would be nice. Oh, go ahead.
I think there's something very real to that, because we just saw the Odyssey come out and it looks amazing, and they did it on original film, and yes, they do use CGI, but they did a ton of practical stuff. And I think people still will love. I certainly love to consume stuff if you say it was made all on original film and with a human. That's pretty cool. The world's top movie right now is still being made with a lot of that stuff, even though most films are made on digital these days. Film, mostly died a couple decades ago. And practical effects have been on the way out a long time. But I think it's still shown that people, I don't know, it's special, right? It's like something being homemade.
Yeah. Well, I think you're back to like, it's now become artisanal. Right, like you have to be they made an active choice to go back to film, and of course it's an all-star cast and a fantastic production group, and they know what they're doing. But if you're going to talk about like most of the industry will be using digital because it's easier, CGI, and because that's where the expertise is. And so now you're almost like, I think the Weaver analogy is a good one. It's like, yeah, you can get some really awesome like woven things if you involve a weaver. It's way better than what you can buy off the rack, but you have to like know a weaver, and it's going to take up a whole bunch of time
and a lot of money,
a lot of money, a lot of time, a lot of money. One argument I've also been looking at is around the case law and the copyright of all this stuff, because I believe, I don't want to get too rat-holed in this, maybe this will be a discussion for a future one, but what is the theory of if this stuff should be copyrightable? And my understanding is the USPTO office does make it difficult to copyright AI, but my gut is this has to change, and my basis for this is this fun fact I uncovered. So if you go back to the 1800s when photography was new, it was not copyrightable for a while, partly because it wasn't believed to be creative. You hold up camera and push button, which, sounds really silly from today. It actually, the case law that broke it was this case, I'm not sure how to pronounce this, Burrow-Gills Lithographic Company versus Cerrone, 1884. And so that's when they were shown that that this does have enough creative power in it. And I guess the thing I've been thinking about is if I'm a badass director, George Lucas, and I've got a team of the world's best artists around me doing CGI and matte paintings and all this stuff, and I'm one of the world's greatest creatives, and if I were to pull out those other nodes, the matte painter, and I replaced it with AI, and that person with AI, and I did that with my CGI artists, and I kept replacing them. I guess what I'm trying to figure out is, does that actually remove any of my individual creativity, or is it the exact same? I'm just now enabled because I can be like George Lucas sitting at home.
Well, I
this
also think like
is what I've been fighting with a little bit, trying to understand.
Yeah. So like I had an interesting conversation right when all this started with a again, I shouldn't say, but like an editor at an important publishing house, and I was like, suppose someone came to you with like a really good comic, but it was clearly AI generated, assuming that's possible right now. He was like, no way. And I said, why? And he said, well, one, everybody who worked for us would be furious, so there's a cultural aspect, but also he's like, we don't know what the rights are. Like, so we can't we can't publish a book we don't own the rights to. But again, to me, this gets back to IP stuff. Like, you can say, well, what is the philosophy on what sort of entity is allowed to have rights, and what is the philosophy on like how much of a contribution do you have to the creative end before you can copyright? But I think really what you want to say is like, well, what is the policy that would work best for like getting good stuff? Yeah. And I don't know what the answer is.
Recently, you were mentioning about Netflix and AI, and Netflix recently bought Interpositive, which is Ben Affleck's company, for $587 million. Let me make sure I got that number right.
It was big, but yeah.
And I'm wondering about. I guess Netflix then, clearly to spend that kind of money, has a path to feeling either confident that they have the IP figured out, or they don't care. I'm wondering if we're going that direction. I mean, I can't imagine them not caring, but
I've thought for a long time VFX is first on the chopping block for artists, because it's like because there's so much money, but also like nobody, maybe you guys, but almost nobody goes to a movie and is like, I got to see this because the VFX supervisor.
Oh, I totally go there for the.
Oh yeah,
VFX
maybe you do, but nobody else in the world like. So whereas like you do say, well, I want a Christopher Nolan movie, or I want to see Brad Pitt looking Brad Pitty, or I want to buy this painting from this person. Like, so that's going to be a little harder to disentangle, or more to the point, you don't want to disentangle it, I don't think. But also like. Like replacing an oil painter is not going to make money for anyone, whereas replacing a VFX department or shrinking it drastically would.
Well, I do think though that there's like the analogy with photography feels really apt here, where it's like there's just so many just boring derivative photos. Like, I mean, look at influencers as a culture right now, right? Everyone takes the same freaking picture over and over again with the same pose pushing the Leaning Tower of Pisa, right? But on the flip side, if you actually are good at the craft, you can make some really compelling photos. I think it works the same with visual effects, right? Visual effects starts off with being something that you're not just going to more dragons, add more dragons, and then just have it, it's like, oh, look, you made it one shot, perfect, exactly what the scene looks like.
Listen, it's funny, if you browse the AI video Reddit, there are people, I was joking about this, like there are these fantasy movies you see people working on that if you titled them would be something like the big boobed wizard ladies all have awesome swords. Like, that's going to be the future. But the real horror of this is not that that's going to be what comes out. It's going to be that the public loves it, and people like me are going to be like, no, you were supposed to make. You're supposed to make art, and Big Boob Wizards Part 7 is just destroying Christopher Nolan. He's nothing now.
Zach, where's the link for that?
Yeah, let's leave a big URL for that. For research for the next podcast.
For research. Yeah, I want to make sure it's.
And
bad.
You're saying there's at least 7 of them.
Yeah, you'd hate to start and not know there's a series. All right, maybe we should move on to.
So we got in the world of people saying, "Hey, AI is cool." We got Linus Torvald recently said Linux is not anti-AI, but I think he is making a very clear point that we're not going to limit Linux from being able to run with AI. I'm not sure he is pro-AI, but he's definitely not anti-AI.
What does it mean to say Linux won't like meaning they won't use it to build it?
I think it could be build it, vibe code it, or I don't know, Chris. I'm trying to dream of what this might look like, but I could imagine a kernel module where it is operated by an LLM, running the internals of it. We're already seeing, by the way, for the nerds out there, compilers being rethought as essentially, what a compiler does is it takes human written language, turns it into computer speak at the most basic level. And we're seeing LLMs start to get into that space too, where the LLMs do a better conversion from human speak into
binary
computer speak. Yeah.
I mean, I do think the start, like, I initially read this as there is a fair amount of backlash in the open source community, especially of as it has gotten easier to write code, the number of pull requests, which is the unit of submission to somebody else's project, have gone up markedly over the last couple of years, to the point where
Yep.
there's an ancient XKCD joke about the entire internet's held up by one random open source project. There's generally like one person who's kind of sitting in there, like, working on this in part-time in Kansas, who is like running a foundational package that everyone uses. And they're just getting overwhelmed with pull requests because they want to review it. They want to keep the craftsmanship kind of high. And so there's been a bit of a backlash on, and most of the harnesses that are used to generate, used to generate vibe code. I don't know if vibe code is the right unit, but we'll just use it for now. We have to figure out what the unit of vibe coding would be. We'll work at
one energy drink worth, I think.
Yeah, that's like one. They tend to also label themselves when you put up a pull request. Like, it'll say this is like powered by Cursor, or like, pick your rig. And so there have been entire open source communities effectively that have said, like, thou shalt not submit vibe coded code. And so here's Linus, who has been one of the most awesome contrarians of all time in the software industry. Like, he just speaks his mind, and he generally is correct. He just basically said, like, nah, we're not going to have like an we're not going to discount this entire technology just because we haven't figured out how to hold it. To paraphrase him. And now I expect to get tweeted at saying that I got that wrong.
Right. I think that's a good cultural stance to take for Linux, because I could easily see Linux becoming the next, having their own Kodak moment, saying, no, we're going to stick with film and digital cameras destroying them. I think that Linux could be the next one to fall if they didn't keep up with this. I want, for our last little bit here, I really want to hear Zach's reporting on LinkedIn posts being made by AI.
Yeah, so this was just a little thing out from Pangram. Pangram came up on my radar because they've actually, so lately a bunch of literary prizes have seemingly gone to AI. Whoops. And so, there we go. Yeah, so Pangram is a software that detected this. Now, you could debate, right, how good are they at it? I don't think they've released their stuff, because I think if you release how you do it, it's very easy to fight against the detector. But so they ran this on all these different social media platforms, and it turns out 41% of LinkedIn content is fully AI, not like you got some help from AI. So I was shocked it wasn't 80%. But
too small. This seems very small from what I've read.
Much too small. Interestingly, it seems to correlate with length. The longer the content, the more likely it is that it was just pure AI stuff. Actually, to be honest, I don't know how impressive this is, because, like, probably a decent amount of the stuff in the set is just trivially, obviously AI. But kind of interesting, because, like, this was obviously not possible a couple of years ago, and now it's like a third of some platforms. If you were picking at random, you're getting something that was just AI generated. So I expect this to just increase and increase until it eats some high percent of all internet. Have you guys gotten? I've gotten to where I get suspicious. Like, it gets weird. I was just on. There's a Reddit called Realer AI, and there was a post where a guy was like, "Well, I paid an artist to do a commission of my anime character, and they got back to me in 15 minutes. So I think it's probably AI." And I looked at it, and I was like, no, it's just a good artist, or at least it's not. It could have been AI, but it was like, there's no tell. And so it's getting to where you're like suspicious. Anything that looks quality, you're like, I don't know. The dead internet theory is becoming no longer a theory.
Yeah, I've definitely seen some Photoshop battles artists like video their workflow. And some people are just really, really good at that tool. Like, I think it's actually
really good.
like, especially if it's your job, it's like you're just going to be able to do it really well, really quickly.
Yeah, I mean, and this is also, like, one thing I tell people with this is it's not always going to be possible to detect, because what you could do, I mean, I'm not a good enough artist for this to help me, but, like, there was a kerfuffle recently where DC Comics pulled a cover because the guy got accused of using AI, and then he provided sketches, but the problem is you could, of course, have AI generate sketches, and at the end of the day, you could always just be like, AI, draw me pencils and I'll do the inks. And the only way to detect that would be to live in a world where you have to, like, turn over your hard drive whenever you submit a project. Maybe we'll get there. I don't know. But it is causing problems.
But
there's actually go ahead.
Could I use AI to make a forensics path for what I mean. I think this is a very, very real problem. What is actual and what is real? I wanted to show this example real quick. I know we're a little out of time here, but I ran into this today. I was looking at this cool behind-the-scenes photo from a famous Seinfeld episode, and then people were saying, so if you're familiar with this episode, it's setting up for this photograph, and I thought, this is really cool. Wait a minute, is it just AI? Because it kind of looks framed like AI, right? You got George here looking a little miffed. I don't know if he'd be looking like that if they were behind the scenes, and I don't know, it just looks like it could be AI, but what I found was this similar one from, you see the time zone, 10 years ago. So we almost have there's this phenomenon where if you want really clean steel for science, you have to go get steel of sunken ships before 1945 when there were nuclear explosions, because that's the only steel on Earth left that I guess you can get to without having it be contaminated by nuclear fossil fuels. By nuclear fallout. And I'm wondering if we're going to have a phenomenon here too. We sort of have this line in the sand at some point around 21, where anything before that almost surely wasn't made by AI.
Yay.
Well, I mean, I did see somebody just, I don't know if it was, Poe's Law is a real thing. And somebody was discussing the fact that they had found a bunch of M dashes in Agatha Christie novel. And therefore, how did Agatha Christie have access to an LLM?
Oh, that's good conspiracy theory stuff.
But I mean,
it's also like presumably part of what's going on is Agatha Christie is other than God, the most popular author ever. So presumably this was an important part of English language writing.
Here's how to write good English is to include this kind of punctuation. I don't know. The tricky part with this, especially on the long form side, is that if you think about LinkedIn's already fairly formulaic in sort of the way that the posts end up being generated. Also, there's there's a chicken and egg problem of, as we consume more content being generated by LLMs, our writing style is going to naturally shift towards LLM-y kind of, and we're also becoming more aware of it, right? I've definitely seen the, in prose, it's you see a lot of these statements will start off it's not just that blah blah blah, it's that blah, and it's that, and then with that plus the M dashes and just some sort of a little bit of a general smarmy tone seems to kind of appear, and unfortunately, smarmy tone and LinkedIn go hand in hand.
So, Chris, there's actually there's a really good article. I won't get into it too much, but it was interesting because the guy was saying we're going to go into this world where everything, a lot of stuff is AI, and there's going to be people who are I will not use AI, and there's going to be mixed cases. But the interesting thing is, he was listen, if you say I'm not using AI, you're already kind of being messed up by AI or influenced by AI, because now you have to do stuff to differentiate from AI. Yeah. So even if you're you're not going to be a pure strand of writing as if there hadn't been AI. You're going to be I'd better not use that construction. I better not use M dashes. Better not do all this other stuff. So human writing might, get, you'll get people who just gravitate towards AI because that's what they grew up with, or you're going to get people who are I'm going to do whatever AI is not doing right now. You'll get a totally different writing style.
It'll be the equivalent of why are you using punctuations in text, Dad? What did I do wrong?
I'm so 19 in
your
90s.
Quotation marks.
Yeah, quotation.
What's with why are you capitalizing things?
Yeah, what's the point? Chris, as the host, I was hoping maybe I'd like to hear your exit for the podcast, but I would like you to use the phrase as an AI language model, and I'd like you to use the, verbal equivalent of M dashes. Let's hear it.
Oh, this is really hard. I think it's going to be easier for me to actually write a sonnet about a cheeseburger on the spot. I'm not sure if I can do this. Can
we do that?
No, I think that's going to probably also fail. But let's try it. Hey, it's not just that we got through the short news without anybody being injured. We managed to talk about LLMs, open source, open weight models, and why Linus Torvalds is once again right.
That's not just efficiency. That's bravery.
It's just good strategy, Zach.
Yeah. Now, that was a load-bearing comment there. So you built into.
Excellent. And now, how can you use LLM to tell people to where to find us?
Yeah. Okay, so next week we're going to be doing the entire podcast with an LLM model telling us what to say back and forth to each other. It's going to be exciting.
Love it.
I predict at some point we will try that out, and it will be hilarious.
Oh God. All right. I think we should try it next week. All right. Until next week.